Hey guys, welcome to another episode of REsimpli podcast. Today I have a very special guest, John Casmon. John and we go way back. We both met each other when we were both starting out at Chicago REIA meeting. So I'm very excited to have him on this podcast as a guest. John, welcome to the show, man. How are you?
Hey, Sharad, thank you for having me, man. I'm excited to be here. It's great to see you again.
Yeah, absolutely, man. My pleasure. Yeah, man. So before we get started, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where do you live? What kind of investing do you do? And then how did you get started?
Yeah, today I live in Cincinnati, but as you alluded to, I used to live in Chicago, so I was there for 8 years. My background really is in corporate America. So I was in marketing and advertising, and I did that for 15 years. Like many of your listeners, I was working the W-2 job and did what I was told to do out of school, got that good job and was working and grinding away at that. But I worked at a company that ended up going bankrupt. And I watched that and experienced it firsthand. And I watched some of my peers who were further along in their careers who didn't have a plan B. And they were really struggling. And at this time, I wasn't married yet, didn't have kids, but I was trying to picture what life would be like if I were further along, in my life at that point, and didn't want to have the rug kind of pulled from underneath me. Fast forward, we moved to Chicago. My wife and I would get married, and I'm starting to invest in real estate, building up my small portfolio, meeting guys like you at these meetups and REIA events. And the agency I was working for ended up going into bankruptcy as well. And when that happened, I had just, invested over 6 figures into a small multifamily property, an 8 unit building. So I was really, I had great equity, right? I have these properties, I had equity in these properties, but I didn't have the cash flow to replace my W-2 income. So that really made me realize what I was doing was working in a way, but the strategy was a little bit off, and I had to recalibrate my investing strategy so that I could achieve success for myself.
Right. So, but before your company went bankrupt, the initial company, you had no plan to like invest into real estate. Like you were just like happy, hey, this is kind of what my path is. I'm just going to keep doing kind of what I'm doing. And it's
I was
the
always, yeah, I was always interested in real estate, but I didn't have like that burning desire and I didn't have
right.
anything to kick me in the pants, right? It was like, oh, the job's
Yeah.
good. Real estate seems interesting one day, right? I was a
Yeah.
1 day investor. One day I'll think about
Yeah.
that. Maybe when I hit this or when I accomplish that. And when we went into bankruptcy, I was like, dude, one day you're going to be unemployed. So one
Yeah.
day needs to be now if you don't take real control over your future.
So you just straight up started with multifamily, or did you do some residential properties?
My very first investment was a 2 unit. So once we moved to Chicago, my wife and I bought a 2 unit duplex, right? We lived in one unit, rented out the other. The next was a 3 unit, then an 8 unit. So we never bought single family rentals. We did do some single family flips, but all of our rentals have always been multifamily.
What kind of properties are you buying now? Large
Today we buy,
multifamilies?
yeah, today we buy large multifamily. We partner with everyday professionals on these deals, so usually 100 units and up. Sometimes, depending on the market, we can go down to 40 or 50 units. But we like cash flowing properties in growth markets throughout the Midwest and the Southeast region. And yeah, I mean, for us, we like properties that are in great growth areas, Class B, which just means that they're affordable and desirable. I think sometimes people go on area, look for properties that are very desirable, but they're very high-end luxury, A-class type stuff, sometimes harder to cash flow. Or people go for stuff that cash flows really well, but not really desirable. So sometimes it's harder to make money on the back end or they don't appreciate as much. We like to try to find that blend of the sweet spot where there is some desire for these properties and the location, but there's also some cash flow and we get some of the value of that.
Where are you raising money from? Are you using your own capital or you're working with money partners?
Well, if you're going to be a real estate investor, at some point you're going to run out of your own money. That's just a truth that everyone will experience, whether you're using lenders, private investors, retail investors, you're going to have to figure out where to source capital. That was one of the challenges we faced, right? When we bought that 8 unit building, we were still finding deals, but I was tapped out. I just invested 6 figures and I didn't know where my next check was going to come from. So I didn't have the ability to go out there and just buy another property. And that's when I learned about OPM, other people's money. And I had heard of it before, but again, I didn't think it was for me. It felt like that was something for someone else or somebody else who was looking to invest. And I really thought about it more and sat down and I got lucky and came across somebody who became my mentor. And he was in this space raising capital and showed me how to do it the right way. So today we kind of use some of those same strategies and teach other people how to use those same strategies of raising capital from everyday real estate professionals. We do invest some of our capital as well. So we have our capital, we invest alongside of our partners though, but we work with everyday investors. We also get bank loans. So typically on our deals, the bank or the first position lender, they're going to put up anywhere between say 60 and 75% of the capital. And then we bring the other, 25 to 40%, we being us along with our private investor partners.
So someone who's getting started, what would you recommend them, like the best way to start raising a little bit of capital? Because generally people, when they're starting out, I mean, they have time available, but they don't have money available. And
Yeah.
generally like finances tend to be, bottleneck for them.
You're talking about starting out raising capital or just starting out
Yeah,
investing?
starting out raising capital. Yeah, I mean, let's say you're a professional, like just kind of similar to what situation you were in, and
Yeah.
then you want to start taking real estate a little bit more seriously, but you don't have enough money to go buy a decent
Yeah.
property.
I tell people that there are really three C's to successfully attracting capital for deals, right? The first C is going to be confidence. You have to build your confidence, and confidence is not, fake hubris, right? I'm not just talking about putting on a good face and just hoping things work out. I'm talking about being truly prepared, right? Educating yourself, reading the books, attending the meetups, listening to podcasts, underwriting deals, making sure that what you're saying is truthful. You've got to do the research. You have to put in the work. That's where the confidence comes from. So if you're confident in what you're doing, you're confident this is a deal, you've run the numbers multiple ways, you know how to look at it, that's going to help you raise capital. Second C is credibility. What in your background can you lean on where people can believe in you, right? Are you a credible investor? What have you done, right? This may be the first time you're raising capital. Maybe you've got some other real estate experience you could lean on and show people, hey, I've done these 5 deals and they've turned out great. Or here's a business that I've ran and operated. Or here's what I've done professionally. On top of your own personal credibility, who do you have around you? I want to see a team, right? I want to see a coach, a mentor, an advisor, a partner, property managers, lenders, right? Who's the team that you've assembled that will help you get this job done? Because as you know, real estate's a team sport, especially when it comes to larger multifamily and commercial real estate. So you got to have those people around you who are going to help lift you up in that credibility. Then the last thing is connections. I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is they reach out to their friends and family and they expect those individuals to invest with them. Now, listen, they may love you, but that money is hard earned money. They don't know if you're going to be successful, particularly if you haven't addressed those first two C's. So you have to expand your connections. You really want to invest with people who believe in real estate, but need help investing in real estate. If you can find those individuals, it's going to make it a little bit easier for you.
What's a good way for, let's say, someone who's starting out, right? They have not done any deal, but they're really motivated. They've done all the research. How would they go about like raising capital? Is it a good idea for them to get started, maybe connect with someone like yourself who's very experienced and this person is finding the deal? What would be some of the ways for someone who's like brand new, starting out? They haven't done any deals, so they don't have like credibility when it comes to real estate, but they still are very motivated and have the right work ethics.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, right? So if you don't have any experience, but you want to get out there and raise capital, I think the first thing is this. You have to make sure that you're going to protect these people, right? We talk about raising capital, and I think sometimes people can look at it through almost a selfish lens, right? What am I going to get out of it? If you don't have any money, well, why do you want to raise capital? Well, more than likely, you want to raise capital so you can make some money and get at equity in some of these bigger deals, right? Well, are you going to protect these people? Because this is really a service business. And if you have zero experience, if your zero experience is out there trying to raise capital for these deals, that's a bit of a liability. So you absolutely want to figure out how do you build that experience and how do you protect those investors in that process. One of the best ways is to align yourself with someone who does have more experience. And that's why coaching is so key. If you can get a coach, you can get a mentor, you can tap in and learn from those individuals. That's going to help you gain that confidence that you are doing deals that will protect that investor, right? I think that that sense of service has to be at the forefront. I can give you all the tips and tricks in the world of how to do it, but if you're not coming from a place of service and taking care of these people, then it's all going to come down, whether it's immediately or down the road, it's going to come crumbling down. So I think first and foremost, make sure you are investing in yourself and the education, the knowledge, surrounding yourself with the right people. And then from a practical standpoint of how I would do that, absolutely. I would align myself with a coach or a partner, someone who has that experience. So they're checking that box. The second thing I would do, if I have time on my hand, but maybe not a lot of money and I want to raise capital, I'm going to figure out where I can add value to other groups. Is that from, research? Is that helping them with some of their back ends and systems? What else can I do to really add value beyond just talking to people who may want to invest? You want to be a part of the team. You want to be fully integrated into the process because you want to actually continue to build your confidence, your knowledge base, and put yourself in a situation where you can truly be a valued asset.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I know you mentioned like having a coach couple of times. That's like when I look back at kind of what I've done in real estate or even with like recently, like one thing I wish I had, if I could go back, I would hire a coach much sooner, like very early on. It would have saved me like years and like hundreds of thousands of dollars and mistakes that I've made. So speak to, the importance of having a coach and how did the coach or mentor that you were working with kind of shaped your career?
Yeah, I think it's two things, right? So one, and I think you and I were kind of similar from that standpoint, right? There are a lot of different coaching things that are out there, and some people may feel jaded, and I completely get it. I went to this 3-day seminar where, they got everybody excited when those TV gurus had put this thing on, right? And first day, everybody's super excited, and this program's like $35,000, and I'm a pretty smart guy, right? And if you would have told me before walking into that room, this thing was available for 35K, I'd probably like, man, I'm not spending 35,000 on that. I'll figure it out.
Mm.
But in that room, I was like, man, well, maybe it is a good investment, right? And I'm talking to my wife. We go to dinner. We talk a little bit more. We go back for day two, and the pitch just goes hard. And they say something that really rubbed me the wrong way, where they told people that if they didn't have the money today, call their credit card companies and ask for an increase on their limits. And that way they can pay it and then go out there and they'll help them buy properties. I'm like, that's got to be some of the worst advice I've ever heard, right? So we left. I'm like, I'm done with this. But we went to the library and we really made it a point to lock in on the resources that were available to us. I started spending a lot of time on Bigger Pockets. I started to network even more than I was already doing. And through that, I reached out to groups who are in Cincinnati. I actually made a post on Bigger Pockets saying, hey, I'm going to be in Cincinnati looking to connect with local investors. Is there anybody I should talk to? And a bunch of people tagged this guy named Joe Fairless. So I'm like, all right, bet. I reach out to Joe. We grab lunch when I come to town, and very similar to how we're talking, he tells me what he's doing. He's got a coaching program, and it just made sense to me. It was a good investment. Now, today, Joe is in a whole other bracket. He's got a $2 billion portfolio today. He had one $7 million deal when I met him. So different animal altogether. But that made more sense for me investing. So when you go back to it, I had built a 13 unit portfolio when I met Joe, the first time I hired a coach, right? Worth $1.5 million. Nothing to brag necessarily, at least from my standpoint, but I felt like I didn't need a coach to get started. I didn't want to be a guy who just paid a coach to get into real estate and then realize, oh, that wasn't worth it. Where I saw the value was when I really needed to scale. When I made that six-figure investment for that 8 unit building, and I was out of money, and I knew I could still find deals and opportunities, but I didn't have money, and I was petrified of losing money for the people I care most about, friends, family, the trust that I've built throughout my career. I didn't want to bring these people on and just lose their money because I missed something or I didn't know something or, that to me was negligence. So it was critical for me to hire a coach at that point because I wanted someone else to help walk me through that process. And I specifically wanted someone who had a blueprint. So that's where I think coaching is critical. If you know what you're looking for and you know the problem you're looking to solve, get a coach, get somebody who's done it, who understands exactly what it is you're trying to do. They're going to help you. You don't necessarily have to hire a coach just to be a real estate investor. But if you know specifically what you're trying to solve, that's where I would seek out someone who understands and has that expertise.
Absolutely. And also, like you mentioned, when you met Joe,
he had already done some deals. He had real world experience. I think that's also very,
Yeah.
very important. Like you can do it on your own, but you're going to make mistakes. You're going to learn from them. But working with a coach, you're going to learn from their mistakes and mistakes of other people that they're coaching. So you don't have to make those mistakes. They're going to give you a blueprint. They're going to give you like a faster way to get to your destination. You don't have to figure out your path. So I 100% agree. It's funny that I had a call with a coach that I work with, and in this, on the parallel, I'm reading a book, and I thought, man, like I have this plan laid out. My coach is going to be so impressed, and she started poking holes. I'm like, holy crap! I didn't even think of that. It just like made me feel so good about like how valuable a good coach is. It's absolutely incredible, man. Hey, I want to talk to you about, so John, you've been doing it for a while. What are some of the mistakes you've made? Like, what are some of the lessons you've learned along?
Yeah. You know,
Do you have a whole notebook that you want to start
yeah,
opening?
we do, man. I try not to look at that one too often. I think that the biggest mistake for me, this is a people industry, and I've realized when I made my transition from corporate America to full-time real estate investor, in the early stages of that transition, I ran things like I did in corporate, where we sit and have a meeting, we have a conversation about a project. I fully expect you to execute on your half, right? We're going to follow up and have a status meeting, but I expect that over the last 3 or 4 days, you were doing the things you said you were going to do. And when we got into like some projects, we were flipping some houses and things like that. I was really floored that people didn't do what they said they were going to do. Like it just seems really simple, but
Shocking.
shocking. You
Yeah.
talk to a contractor and it's like, okay, hey, we're gonna paint these 3 units and we'll have the painters come in Thursday. They'll be done by Monday. Okay, great. All right, Thursday. Hey, are we still on track? Yeah, yeah, things are good. All right, cool. Well, it's the weekend. I come back Monday. Oh, well, the painters never showed. What? How did they not show? And then how did you not call me to tell me, hey, man, painters didn't show, schedule's gonna get pushed, like they're 3 days lost and no one said anything. And just the
Right.
fact that was commonplace just really threw me off because like, oh, I have to be really hands-on here. I can't just expect you to do your job and do what you're telling me you're gonna do. So that was really the biggest thing. I think we really struggle with that, with different contractors starting out. But part of that for me also was helping me identify my sweet spot. As an investor, I realized when we are working on smaller properties, especially flip type projects, you have to be hands on. And when I was a busy full time professional with 2 little kids, I didn't have all day to be sitting at the property babysitting to make sure people showed up and did their jobs, right? So I realized I needed scale. I need these bigger projects where these people are on payroll. Like there's checks and balances. There's a team of 3 people who are there. If you're not showing up doing your job, I'm going to know about it right away because you're holding somebody else up from doing their job. So that really was important to me to understand the kind of investor I wanted to be. And by buying larger properties, quite frankly, it's a little bit easier because I'm managing them the same way we managed our corporate stuff, right? When I was a GM, I had $100 million advertising budget. John didn't have to go out there and buy individual advertising, spots and dots to air commercials. That wasn't my job. There was a whole agency devoted to figuring out what ESPN was charging and ABC, and they would buy that, right? So when you have scale, you have those resources. But if it were just me, well, no, I got to go figure that out. Well, I don't know who to call at ESPN. I don't know what to do. I don't have the leverage to negotiate, right? So everything's going to take a lot longer. So that scale makes everything bigger when you could bring in either property management, third party property management. They have vendors lined up. And now I can really operate more at that manager level, that senior leader level, where I'm trying to understand what's the holistic picture here, where we run into some issues. Let's fix this. Let's address this. Let me equip my team with the information and resources they need to be successful, as opposed to me showing up on site to make sure the painter gets here at 10 a.m. Right? That's a much
Mhm.
better use of my time than babysitting, contractors.
100% agree with you. And I come from corporate America also, and 100% agree with you. Like, just initially when I started working at contractors, I was just shocked that people would not even show up. Like, who does that? Like, why would you not show? You gave me a word and you're not there. And but yeah, you live and you learn, and then you have to have a backup to a backup contractor now
Yeah,
just to make sure
yeah.
you get the job done. So yeah. Let me ask you this. So where you are, you've had, achieved incredible success. Like what's your plan? Like where do you see yourself in next 3 to 5 years? What are some of the things you're working on?
Yeah, one of the things that we realize is really two big things are driving me. So one, we want to help more families. As I think about again my time at GM and my time in corporate America, as when you're a younger parent, right, parent of young kids, you only have so much time with them, before they're teenagers and they're out doing their own thing. My oldest son just turned 10. So that clock is kind of ticking, right? Where we got to really make these memories now. And I think about the families who want to spend more time with the people they love, doing the things they love. And we want to help them, right? We want to help them get passive income. They don't have to be exclusive to us, but if we can teach people how to invest or partner with them on certain deals and be a part of that journey, that's really one of the main things we want to do. So we're trying to help more people get into, passive income and real estate investing, both passively, but also on the active side. We have a lot of folks who are, again, very skilled individuals, want to scale, want to raise capital for deals, want to do the same things that we're doing. We want to help those individuals do it, but do it the right way. Learn how to protect their investors, to learn how to look at deals, particularly when you are scaling. As you know, the interest rate environment has changed a lot of things with real estate investors. And one of the biggest things that we've seen is people have gotten very lax in their deal criteria. So we've tried to stick to our fundamentals. We have not done as many deals as other groups over the last few years intentionally. Well, I shouldn't say intentionally. We try to stay conservative, and by being conservative, we weren't able to do as many deals as other groups. With that said, we think it's a great time to be an investor. There are deals coming online now that will cash flow, that have great upside potential. Demand from a renter standpoint is still strong. So we want to capitalize on that and bring out some partners to help us grow and scale. The last thing I'll say for us, when I look at the next 3 to 5 years, I think it's really important for people to see people who look like them succeeding, because it's very easy for us to maybe have the view that I mentioned earlier, right? That's cool and interesting, but that's not for me. That's for someone else. And I felt like that when I first came into the industry. I just wanted to have enough properties to cover some of my bills. That's all I wanted, right? And then you see people who are raising money, and that didn't feel like it was for me either. And when you don't see people like you doing something, it's very easy to disconnect that must not be for me. And as I've gotten more into this space, as people see me, it starts to change the way they view themselves and what they can do. And representation is really, really key. And there are plenty of groups that this doesn't matter. But when you look at the stats, African Americans have the lowest net worth in this country. Like there's huge, huge gaps, and we talk about generational wealth and economic impact and all these different things. I've realized that it's really important for me to be a bit of a beacon in that space, to teach people, not just to do it and go
Right.
hide in the corner with my little money, but to actually show people, hey, here is how you take whatever you have and grow it and scale it and connect with people and just try to help wherever I can. So that's something that's really important for us, which is why education is so important for us, just to help people see things are possible. Because unfortunately, there are people in the space who don't have the same integrity. And, I think people get burned, and it kind of it makes them feel like they can't trust other operators when you go out there and you get burned. And that's something I think we're fighting it as an industry, particularly when you are a minority. I think it's really important to make sure you stand out and take that credibility and trust it. So people have, we spend a lot of time, years building trust and credibility, and we don't want to lose that anytime soon.
I absolutely agree with you, man. And I relate to a lot of what you mentioned. This is something that I had been struggling with on what my like why was, you know, and working with the coach, I got some clarity. I'm still not 100% there, but I feel like I'm like 70, 80% there. How does it feel to you to have that clarity to not just like do it for your family, but you have a bigger purpose, bigger mission? Like, how does that feel to you?
It's empowering, because there are days where you just don't want to do anything, like there's an easier path for sure, right? The easy path is to not expose yourself to criticism or things of that nature. I mean, I'll give you a real example, right? We could very easily just work with private equity, go get a big check writer, they write the checks, boom, we could go do these deals. One of the main reasons we like to work with retail investors is we like that impact. There's a father and son team. I know the son introduced me to the father, and they have been investing with me now for about 4 years. And I was just talking to him the other day because he called me about a nothing relating to our deals. He just called about a tax question. He sold another property and wanted some information or feedback on a 1031. But just the relationships with the families you build, and in their case, they were doing well, but that's also the difference between, him and his grandson, right? Because we're talking about generational wealth. And if he can either 1031 this property or roll some equity from this one to that one, I mean, that could be $50,000 or $100,000. That could be a college fund.
Yeah.
Those are real economic, dollars and impact dollars for someone's family. So there's a lot of pride that comes in that. It also keeps me motivated. It also keeps me really humble. So when I say humble, I mean continue to learn, continue to focus, try to make sure we're being conservative with our projections, our numbers. We look at every single deal, and one of the first things we do is say, well, how could we lose money here? And once we identify
Interesting.
those things, we like to start ripping it apart. Okay. And I'll give you an example. I was looking at a deal someone sent me in Pennsylvania. So I'm not as familiar with the Pennsylvania market. So the first thing is, all right, well, it's a smaller market outside of major city. One ways we could lose money is some of the key employers could leave. Okay. So all right, well, let's check on that. What's the health of those employers? Like what's their credit status? Are they hiring? Are they firing? Are they expanding? Like what's going on with that? Okay, how do we feel there? So we that's the first thing, right? Well, what's the next thing? Well, rents could go down, right? Maybe people don't want to pay more in rents. All right, well, let's go look at occupancy. Let's go look at where rents are today. Let's go look at development. So we have a whole process where we start to chip away at this tree of risk mitigation, right? And that process allows us to not get too excited or too giddy on a deal. I think real estate investors are naturally optimistic. So you almost have to train yourself to be more negative, right? Because it's easy to look at something like, oh,
Yeah.
we could renovate the kitchens and the bathrooms and paint this, and we can drive rents $200 and we're gonna make $10 million, and everyone gets excited, right? Like even investors, the first thing they say is, oh, what are the profits? What are the returns? I'm
Yeah.
like, those are not the
Uh,
first questions you want to ask, right? Because you can put anything on paper. I want to know, how can I lose my money? And as you
I love
start to
that, man.
mitigate that, as you start to
Yeah.
remove the risk, and I'm starting to like, okay, it'd be kind of hard to lose all my money. Like I can still not make money, but when you get to the point where you feel pretty confident that the floor is high, then I can start paying more attention to the ceiling, right? Now, if you're a younger person, maybe you're a crypto bro, and you're like, hey man, whatever, we just gonna shoot and see what happens, and something's gonna hit. Okay, great.
Yeah.
But then maybe real estate's not the right play. Development could be at, but maybe it is crypto, maybe it is, penny stocks or something else, right? If you're saying, hey, I've got time on my side, I'm gonna just throw a bunch of stuff at the wall. One of these should hit big, and that's the strategy. Great. I go back to the family I just mentioned, father and son. Well, the father is retired. Okay, he doesn't have money to be gambling out there. He needs to have his money work through his retirement age, and he wants to have something to give to his son to help take care of his, the third generation there. He's not trying to gamble with that. He's not trying to guess and hope something works. He wants to understand the risk. Now he's willing to take the risk, but he also wants to know that we've mitigated the risk, and he trusts us to help him do that.
Right. I love that question that you start with, how can we lose money here? Like work backwards from that. And you're so right. Like just generally real estate investors tend to be so optimistic about everything. They just look at, hey, how much can I flip this property for? How much can I wholesale for? They just look at the profit number and they overlook all the other rest. So I love that your thought process of challenging yourself. Okay, how can we lose money here? And then seeing, okay, what's the percentage of that happening? How do we work back from that? How do we plug holes, man? That's great, man. Hey, John, it's been absolutely incredible, man. Thank you so much for sharing all the information, all the knowledge that you have. We have one last segment where we get to learn a little bit more about you. You're doing all these amazing deals. You have two boys, you said, right? 10, and how old
Yep.
is the other one?
10-7.
10 and 7. Nice, man. What do you do for fun?
I spend a lot of time coaching my boys. So
Yeah.
we they're in football, soccer, big in soccer.
Nice.
The little one does track and wrestling. The big one is doing taekwondo and other sports. So spend a lot of times with them doing that. But not just that, they do piano and they're busy kids. It's funny because I never expected to be that dad.
With
And
all that, do they go to school also?
they go to school, they get great grades. They learn
Man,
how to
you
juggle
have them
things.
busy. I love that. I love
Yeah,
that.
man. You know what? They drive it.
Yeah,
I think some parents really push their kids to do various things. We had a conversation to say, hey, just try stuff, see what you like. My
yeah,
little one loves pretty much everything. And then he gets caught up where I'm like, okay, you can't do everything, kid. Like you
everything.
got to
Yeah,
pick. So we're actually trying to wind down because like when they're little, you want them to have more exposure to stuff. But as they
absolutely.
start to age, it's like, well, listen, I can't drive you all over the city. But
Yeah,
I spent a lot of time with my boys, and that was one of my whys, right? As we think about success, as I think about success, one of the ways I define that is my ability to spend time with my kids, to be present with them, to be, at functions, to be at games, to be at practices. I mean, money is money, but as we talked about, you don't get this time back.
yeah.
So that was something I was very, very intentional about, even, when I was in corporate America. And that was one of the things that really drove me to make that transition. So I spent a ton of time with my kids, coaching them in sports. Is probably the biggest hobby I got in. Fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at it.
No, that's great, man. That's great. I have a 7-year-old son and 3-year-old daughter, so I totally relate to the 7-year-old. They want to just go out and try everything in the world. Yeah, so I agree. All right. What's the one book that's had the biggest impact in your life? It could be a personal book, it could be a business book, or it could be one of each.
Man, that's a tough one. There are about 5 or 6 books that I want to say, but the
Sure.
way you
Yeah. Maybe.
phrase the question, I'm going to pick the power of focus. And the reason I say that book is the power of focus was really the first book I read where I've actually never finished reading the book, right? So there's a little bit of irony, the power of focus, and I've never finished it. It's so good that every time I would read it, I would get inspired with ideas that I would have to put down the book and just start going on
Just-
them, And it's just a great book. I read that book in like 2005. I was not an avid reader back then, so this was again a book that really kind of helped me transition to realize, wow, there's a lot of knowledge in these books. I was a kid who I read whatever I had to read in school, and I just, I had to power through it to get done. But I never loved reading like that.
Right.
I enjoy reading for fun, but not, for that reason. I wasn't aware of this kind of self help and that industry. So that was the first book that really got me going. So I would say that one. To give you two others real quick. Of course, Rich Dad Poor Dad, which I think is key for so many real estate investors. But Atomic Habits is another one that really helped me
Yeah.
because it allowed me to take a more direct sense of power and control over who I wanted to be. We talk about wanting to be fit and want to be in shape, and it's hard because that goal feels so far away, right? Or even raising capital, right? Okay, you want to raise $1 million. That could feel daunting. If you've never called anybody and talked to anybody about investing, raising $1 million can feel unrealistic and daunting. But when you start to really understand what the steps are, and then you say, okay, well, what's the one thing I really need to be doing on a daily basis? And if you can start to really
Yeah.
understand that and then track that, you'll understand the progress you're really making. That work obviously stacks up over time.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah. And I agree with you. The best books are the ones where you start reading them and you have to have a notepad with you to write all the notes
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
so many actionable items. All right. If you could spend a day with anyone, dead or alive, who would you want to spend the day with and why?
I'd probably say my grandmother. She passed away in 2002, and she's just very, inspirational and influential person in my life. Just really supported me and helped me, treated me like an adult before anyone else treated me like, and I mean a true adult. Like we would talk on the phone for hours when I was in college, and she gave me great life advice that has helped me, today with my marriage. Like seriously, just brilliant woman who was just fun and easygoing. Everyone loved her. So I'd love to see her and see where I'm at today, my grandchildren and or her grandchildren. And I think that would be special. So that would be the one I would say.
Great answer, man. All right, John, this has been absolutely incredible. If someone wants to connect with you and learn a little bit more about your journey or, just connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, we have some resources on our website. So if you go to casmoncapital.com, we have a sample deal package. Whether you want to be a passive investor or active, you can learn what to look for in a deal with our sample deal package. We also have a free resource that is the 35 hacks to find the best markets and submarkets from our podcast guests. So check that out. You can download those free resources at casmoncapital.com.
Perfect. We'll put the link in our show notes. Thank you so much, John. Really great catching up
Absolutely.
with you, man. Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you. Thank you for having me.